Hey, what's up, everyone? Today's the day. The Boys Season 2 has finally had its finale, and I'm recording in my car because I'm 5 hours away from where I usually record. Check this out. My window doesn't roll up. This is a piece of shit, by the way. I gotta buy a new car. Anyways, The Boys Season 2 has had its finale. This is basically just going to be my spoiler-free thoughts on the series as a whole and how I compare it to the first one. First off, I'm going to say if you have never watched The Boys, this is a show that I highly recommend you check out. This is honestly my favorite superhero thing to come out since Avengers Endgame. Like in a post-Endgame world, this and maybe the Spider-Verse sequel are basically the freshest, most interesting things about superheroes to me as of right now. So yeah, if you are into superheroes at all and you like dark, irreverent humor that has a very topical message as to the real world, I highly, highly recommend this show. It is top tier, one of the best shows on TV right now. And with that being said, I'm going to be spoiling some things from season 1. So if you haven't seen The Boys, this is your last chance. Go check that show out. So at the end of season 1, we leave off with our main team on the run. They're wanted by the government, and they're very much wanted to be killed by Vought. Butcher has just been made aware that his wife is still alive and has a son that is Homelander's son. Starfire is still in the Seven, and things kind of start to come to a head when a new member of the Seven is appointed by the chairman of Vought, Stormfront. I think this video is mostly going to be talking about how I felt with character dynamics in this show for this season. So I'm going to start with Stormfront. Stormfront is probably one of the most unbelievably well-written characters I've seen in a while. At first, you're like, you are interesting. What is your motive? What is your agenda? You seem kind of interesting. You seem kind of fun. And then something happens a few episodes in, and then you hate her to no end. She is the most abysmally hateful person in this entire series as of right now. Like, that's no easy feat. Homelander is a piece of shit, and everybody knows he's a piece of shit. But Stormfront takes that title 100% in this season. And Stormfront's dynamic and relationship with Homelander is very interesting to watch. At first, at the beginning of the season, they really are at odds. But as the season goes on and they start to help each other more and more, things get to be really, really interesting between the two. Especially around the end, when a few more characters are put into play. The first character to have an arc in the series that converges with Stormfront's is Kimiko. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but like something really, really big happens between those two characters. And honestly, I think Kimiko's arc in this season is probably my least favorite arc out of everyone in this season. Like, it had such a great potential setup. It had the coolest setup ever, and you just want to see what is going to happen with it. But for the majority of the season, it kind of goes nowhere. Until, like, the finale, really. And Frenchie's arc is connected to Kimiko's very heavily, and he didn't get a whole lot to do either. Like, there were episodes where they would be off doing their own thing just because the plot demanded in that certain episode that they wouldn't be there, or else it would end way too fast. But as far as, like, character arcs go, that's really, like, the only flaw that I have with that. Every other character in this show has an amazing arc, in my opinion. Huey's arc is pretty cool. You get to see him take more of a leadership role with the team, and we get to see him do more things that are hands-on and dirty, and we get to see him devolve a little bit, but we still get to see him keep his charm. And I really like where he ended up at the end of the season, along with Starlight. I really liked how their dynamic was played off again in this season. I liked how their characters progressed together. Starlight's personal arc was also really cool. First, starting off as a mole for the boys inside of the Seven. That was a really interesting way to take things. And the way her arc ends at the end of the season is really great from where it began. And it'll also be really awesome to see where it goes in season 3, mostly because of where other characters are going. Mother's Milk had an arc that was a lot smaller than everybody else in this season, but that's fine for me. Like, I felt like they did his character justice very, very well. Basically, his main arc in this season is just to get back to his wife and daughter and be a part of their lives again. And that's paid off very well in the end. I guess that's a mild spoiler, I guess. But yeah, we mostly get to see him join along on other people's story arcs in this season, which is fine. He benefited those stories very well. We get to see a lot more of Mallory in this season, and mild spoilers. I guess this is kind of a spoiler for who eventually shows up. Lamplighter is finally introduced. There's a lot of foreshadowing in the first season as to the past between Mallory and Lamplighter and the boys. And we finally get to see Lamplighter introduced to this series, and her and Lamplighter's scenes are some of the coolest in this entire season. I guess now that I mentioned Lamplighter, I'm just going to go around and talk about the 7, and then I'll eventually loop around to the last member of the boys. Let's start with the Deep. The Deep is the most pathetic character ever, and it's fun to just watch him go through absolute hell. I love the bowling pin dynamic that this season did with the Deep. They set him up. They did a lot of good development for the character, only just to knock it all down and make him the butt of the joke. I absolutely love that. The Deep is absolutely pathetic, and I would rather see him in no other light. We see him join the Church of the Collective in this season, along with A-Train. A-Train and the Deep join the Church of the Collective in this season because they are both basically no longer in the 7, and they went back in. And everything that happens between them and the Church of the Collective is really, really cool to watch. And very hilarious at times. Especially with both where these characters end up at the end of this season. Black Noir is awesome as ever. One of the funniest things about this series for me is Black Noir. How he's this gritty and dark badass, and then like they'll just do these out of character jokes with him, usually one per episode, and that's usually one of my favorite parts of every single episode, and we get to see a lot more of that in this season as well, which I absolutely enjoyed. Queen Maeve gets a really great arc in this season. Holy crap. We get to see her slowly, more and more, try to defect from Vought and the 7 as she tries to escape the grasp of Homelander. And it's really interesting to see where that goes as well. Man, I keep saying that. I keep saying that all the time. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen that at this point, but like, what else am I supposed to say without spoiling anything? And finally, Homelander. The dynamic between Homelander, Butcher, Rebecca, and Ryan is the most interesting thing about this entire season. Butcher is trying to rescue Becca. He doesn't really care about Ryan, because he hates soups. He just wants Becca. But Homelander only wants Ryan. He gives zero fucks about Becca. But he also doesn't want Butcher to have his way. So he's trying to make Butcher's life an absolute living hell. And to see him try to take on the role of a father figure for Ryan is both terrifying and also kind of sentimental. You kind of feel for the guy a little bit, because he never had a father, and he's just trying to be what he imagines it could be. He's a very terrible person, and he loves being a terrible person sometimes, but at the same time, he also kind of resents the fact that he is a terrible person. And on the flip side of that, Butcher is very, very dark in this season. For most of the season, he is definitely not as charming as he was in the first season. He's a lot darker, and we get to see a lot more of the monstrous sides of this character, and how his arc and Homelander's arc, Becca's and Ryan's arc wrap up in the finale of this season. It absolutely blew me away.
Don't you worry. Daddy's home.
I do, however, have one main problem with this season. It is definitely not as well paced and as fluid as the first season. The first season never let up. It was basically kind of like watching an 8-hour long movie, almost like Stranger Things, really, for me. This one had a little bit more breathing room and a little bit more dead air, even. And that kind of bothered me a little bit. Part of the reason why I feel that way could be because it was not released in the binge format, but I feel like the episodes themselves do tend to drag a little bit sometimes more than the first season did. Even in the first 3 episodes or so that were released in binge format, it did drag a little bit more than the first season did. Like, first season is honestly like top tier television for me, but season 2 didn't really live up to that, but it has some of the most amazing moments in the entire series still so far, and I cannot wait for season 3. So with that being said, and also what I was saying about Frenchie and Kimiko's arcs that didn't really live up to me, I'm going to give The Boys season 2 a B+. I still highly recommend you check out this season and the first one if you haven't checked that out so far. But yeah, I'm 100% on the Boys train, the hype train for this show. I cannot wait for season 3, whenever the hell it comes out. Hopefully it starts shooting soon. You literally have no excuse to delay TV shows at this point. I mean, you can just drop them. You can just drop them. They're literally sitting on a computer right now. And since other TV shows and movies are beginning production again, there's literally no excuse for this show to not go back into production right now so that we can have it ASAP. Anyways, what were your thoughts on The Boys season 2? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to like and sub and do all that stupid shit that'll get me places, if ever. Anyways, have a nice one.